I'm not going to sit back and watch. Here's the thing, you can't listen to that anymore. They're going to say whatever they want to say, but that shouldn't stop you from speaking out about what you believe in. It's time to do the right thing and to speak boldly and not compromise about what you believe in. They're going to continue silencing you until you're backed into a corner and you won't say anything else.
It becomes this almost like an eclipse where the truth is hidden behind it. And yes,
Micky McCoy's wife has finally broken her silence, and she did not hold back. She's calling out Erika Kirk, and even the person rumored to be the TPUSA Chief of Staff is suddenly tangled in the drama. This isn't your typical internet back and forth. This is the kind of situation that makes you sit up straight, put your phone down, and grab some popcorn, because things are getting wild, and if you think this is just a small disagreement, think again. What she's hinting at goes way deeper: whispers of cover-ups, broken trust, and people allegedly using their influence in all the wrong ways. According to her, she's reached her breaking. Enough is enough, she said, and now she's bringing everything she knows straight into the spotlight for everyone to see.
Told me it was something so instant that even if Charlie had been shot in the operating room itself, nothing could have been done.
By all accounts, this situation has been brewing for months, involving several people who were allegedly protecting one another, and no one expected it to explode right now. Erika Kirk believed she was in the clear. The supposed chief of staff also assumed everything was locked down and hidden. But Micky McCoy's wife had other plans. Her message was direct: not while I'm here. And just like that, the entire situation was dragged into the open, but that's only the beginning. There are details most people won't even dare to mention, things that played out behind closed doors, now slowly coming to the surface. Before we dive into the most shocking part, let's quickly break down who the key players really are. Micky McCoy is a rising young commentator gaining traction in conservative circles, building his own platform and turning heads with his unfiltered takes on current events. Meanwhile, his wife, someone who usually stays far away from the spotlight, has clearly reached her breaking point, and her decision to finally speak up is what set this entire chain reaction in motion.
I didn't make him feel guilty for being away too long or too much, or getting home too late. I always told him, home is here for you.
Then we have Erika Kirk, a known face within Turning Point USA, someone who's been positioning herself as one of the rising personalities in the conservative space. She's been on stages, podcasts, panels, you name it, building a polished public image. But behind that smooth exterior, according to the account being shared, there were actions that raised serious questions. And then there's the organization's chief of staff, that's supposed to ensure professionalism, transparency, and accountability. Yet, based on the allegations being discussed, they didn't step in neutral. Instead, they reportedly aligned themselves with Erika, choosing to protect her rather than address what was unfolding: a textbook case of potential conflict of interest. Now, here's what was alleged to have happened, and brace yourself, because this is where everything heats up. According to Micky McCoy's wife, Erika Kirk's behavior reportedly crossed lines well beyond professional interaction, and far beyond what anyone could label as harmless or friendly. And when the wife attempted to address the situation privately and respectfully, things didn't calm down, they escalated. She claims that instead of responding maturely, Erika flipped the script. Rather than taking responsibility or acknowledging anything, she allegedly shifted into victim mode, acting as if she were the one being wronged, and this is where the situation blew open. Because according to the story, the TPUSA Chief of Staff had known about these issues from the start and allegedly chose to back Erika anyway. Instead of handling things responsibly, they were said to have helped reshape the narrative, placing all the blame on the wife and making her appear like she was simply overreacting.
And when you take that stand, it will encourage and inspire someone else to do the same. Whether that is someone in your circle, whether that's a family member, whether that's someone you've never even met before because they saw you posting something on social media.
Imagine the feeling: you discover someone crossing lines with your husband, and when you try to address it calmly and privately, they join forces with people above them to flip the script on you. Suddenly you become the problem, your concerns become a joke, and you are painted as the one who's out of control. According to the story, that's exactly what happened to the wife of Micky McCoy. And honestly, it's no surprise she eventually decided to speak up. How much can someone take when their side of the story keeps getting twisted? But don't rush, because this situation is far more layered than it looks. According to her, this wasn't some single misunderstanding or a one-time moment of bad judgment. It was a pattern, something that had reportedly been unfolding for months, and at the center of it was Erika Kirk, whose behavior, she claims, kept crossing boundaries. We're talking about a string of red flags, messages that didn't feel appropriate, showing up at events where she wasn't expected, and inserting herself into situations that had nothing to do with her role or responsibilities. In other words, this wasn't accidental, it was ongoing. And that's exactly why the situation finally boiled over. What's even more striking is that, according to the story, many people in the same environment were aware of these behaviors, yet no one spoke up. Why? Because of Erika Kirk's ties to TPUSA, her position, her image, and the influence she reportedly held. The narrative suggests there was a culture where certain individuals were protected, and anything inconvenient was quietly swept aside. Then came the turning point. Micky McCoy's wife decided to come forward. She reportedly shared evidence, screenshots of private messages, verbal exchanges, and interactions that many say crossed professional boundaries. According to the story, this evidence didn't just raise questions about one person's behavior, it highlighted the environment that allowed it to continue unchecked for months. The messages allegedly included late-night texts, overly familiar comments, and exchanges that seemed far from professional. For anyone reviewing them, the implications are clear. These weren't ordinary work interactions, and they sparked a closer look at the culture and accountability within the organization. The messages reportedly went beyond what most would consider normal or courteous between colleagues, with tones that, according to the story, could make someone feel dismissed in their own marriage. And the most striking part? When the wife tried to set boundaries and address the situation directly, Erika allegedly went straight to the Chief of Staff, acting as if she were the one wronged, and the wife was at fault. This is where the Chief of Staff's role comes into focus and where things get truly complicated. According to the account, when Micky McCoy's wife attempted to resolve the issue through proper channels, she was reportedly shut down. Instead of offering support or guidance, the Chief of Staff was unusually protective of Erika. The story claims that those in power allegedly advised the wife to just let it go or suggested she was overreacting. Some even reportedly tried to frame her as overly jealous or emotionally insecure. Imagine being in that position. You see boundaries being crossed, you raise legitimate concerns, yet the very people who are supposed to handle it responsibly seem to dismiss you and even side with the person causing the problem. It's the kind of situation that shakes you, makes you question your own feelings, and according to the story, that's exactly what happened. But here's the twist that, reportedly, neither Erika nor the Chief of Staff expected. Micky McCoy's wife allegedly kept meticulous records of everything. Every text, every email, every screenshot, every moment that crossed a line, she saved it all. Not to stir trouble, but to protect herself in case the narrative was ever turned against her, and that moment came. Once it became clear that attempts were being made to downplay, hide, or spin the story, she decided to go public, no holding back. According to the accounts circulating online, the evidence was jaw-dropping. It reportedly included conversations where Erika admitted to crossing boundaries but allegedly continued the behavior, messages that suggested an unusual level of familiarity, and statements that hinted at a lack of respect for professional limits. The story also claims that Erika may have relied on her position and the Chief of Staff's protection to avoid accountability, at least for a time. But with the evidence laid out clearly, the narrative could no longer be twisted. What had once been whispers and rumors turned into undeniable proof, and suddenly the story was no longer just speculation. This was no longer just a case of he said, she said. According to the account, the behavior was documented line by line, message by message. The messages allegedly sent by Erika reportedly went far beyond mere tactlessness. Some passages reportedly showed a dismissive tone toward the wife, treating her concerns almost like a joke, and that was only the beginning. The story claims there were exchanges suggesting that the TPUSA Chief of Staff worked with Erika to handle the situation, which, according to the account, meant figuring out how to get the wife to step back, stay silent, and quietly disappear from the narrative. Instead of addressing the concerns directly, the alleged focus was on sidelining the person raising them, a tactic often seen in environments that prioritize image over transparency. Then comes what some are calling the wildest part. In certain messages allegedly from Erika, she reportedly admitted she knew she was crossing boundaries, yet seemed confident that her connections within TPUSA would shield her from consequences. Like an invisible safety net, she reportedly believed her ties and influence would keep her protected. No matter what, she believed that as long as she was part of the organization, no one could touch her. And for a time, that reportedly seemed to be. According to the allegations, the Chief of Staff consistently defended her, spun the story in her favor, and protected her from any accountability regardless of what was actually happening. But then the story took a turn. The wife didn't just have evidence about behavior directed at her husband. She reportedly also had messages from other women in the same environment who claimed they had experienced similar interactions from Erika. This wasn't limited to one person or a single incident. According to the account, it was a pattern repeated behaviors over months, with multiple witnesses, multiple people, and repeated boundary crossing stuff. That's what made the story much bigger. It wasn't just a personal conflict. It raised bigger questions. How many people had been affected? How many stayed silent out of? How many instances were covered up because people felt they couldn't fight? When this evidence started to come to light, it transformed the narrative from a private dispute into something far more serious, with implications that went well beyond just two individuals. At this point, the story was no longer just a personal drama. It reportedly exposed a system where connections and status could shield questionable behavior. According to the account, Erika allegedly crossed boundaries multiple times with married men in the same. The wife claimed this was a pattern, not an isolated incident. When concerns were raised and attempts were made to address things privately, Erika allegedly responded in a familiar way, portraying herself as the victim, as if she needed protection. The organization, according to the story, consistently backed her, regardless of the actual circumstances. Observers also reportedly began noticing a troubling pattern, similarities in the way Erika allegedly interacted with men in the organization, suggesting a repeated approach rather than isolated. These patterns, when pieced together, painted a much larger picture than anyone had initially imagined.
I do see some similarities of my husband in Judy and Vice President Judy. Yes, I do.
Erika Kirk, widow of slain conservative leader Charlie Kirk, embracing U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance at a public event. Well, this image has ignited widespread speculation on.
And that's when a theory started to take shape. According to online discussions, the Chief of Staff's protection of Erika might not have been just about friendship. There could have been work relationships, joint projects, or mutual dependencies motivating them to keep her content in quiet. In other words, the story could be far more complex than simply covering for a colleague. It might involve benefits, image management, and connections that outsiders can't see. Then comes a detail that stops people in their tracks. The wife claims that the very first time she tried to address the situation privately, calmly, and professionally, Erika allegedly really laughed and reportedly said something like, "It's not that serious. You're making a big deal out of it." Imagine that, your marital boundaries are being crossed, you speak up honestly, and the other person treats your concerns like a joke. That kind of reaction, according to the account, is exactly what pushed the wife to finally step forward. And now, it's clear that this story is no longer a minor conflict. According to the reports, it reflects a pattern of behavior, a system of protection, and raises questions about the motives behind it. And the complications don't stop there. Erika, it is said, allegedly went beyond boundary-crossing messages and dismissive attitudes, reportedly using her own platform and influence to further complicate the situation. According to the story, Erika allegedly used her connections within TPUSA to subtly shape how the wife was perceived. Not through direct attacks, but with vague social media posts, carefully worded comments at events, and suggestive statements, all designed to undermine the wife's credibility without anyone being able to call it out directly. She also reportedly leveraged friends, mutual acquaintances, and organizational connections to paint the wife as the troublemaker. A form of social manipulation that's hard to see but can be extremely effective when wielded by someone with influence and a platform. Then, as the story went public, the online reaction was immediate and intense. One commenter wrote, "The fact that she had to go public because no one else would handle it privately says everything about how these organizations protect certain people. It's shocking." Another added, "Erika and her chief of staff thought they could silence her, but she presented the evidence. Respect." And a third said, "This is exactly how these organizations operate. They protect their high-profile members, regardless of right or wrong." Anyone who speaks up faces pushback. The story, according to the account, quickly became more than just a personal dispute. It sparked a broader conversation about power, influence, and accountability within these spaces. According to the story, those who spoke up often got pushed aside. This wife, however, reportedly showed remarkable courage. One comment that circulated online summed it up. Erika allegedly thought her TPUSA connections made her untouchable until Micky McCoy's wife released a series of screenshots. Suddenly, the tables turned. What had seemed untouchable was now exposed, and the consequences followed. But the story isn't one-sided. Some people questioned why she made everything public, asking why it couldn't have been handled privately. Would sharing it on social media only make things worse? Critics said going public was like pouring fuel on the fire. Supporters pushed back. According to the account, she had tried to handle the situation discreetly, only to be ignored, blocked, or misrepresented at every turn. When every private avenue was shut down, she allegedly had no choice but to bring the story into the open. And that's what made the situation explode. As people debated and took sides, the story spread even further layer by layer. The alleged behaviors, the cover-ups, the protection, the attempts to manipulate perception were revealed publicly. What started as a private attempt to resolve the issue quietly became a powerful exposure, showing how efforts to silence someone can sometimes backfire spectacularly. At that point, going public became the only option. Not to stir drama, but to force people to confront what they had been avoiding for so long. And this is a detail many miss. Much of what was happening remained completely under the surface. Not in newspapers, not covered by major media, but quietly discussed in small corners of the online community. According to accounts gathered from various online sources, this wasn't the first time whispers of inappropriate behavior had circulated in some TPUSA groups. For years, these were just rumors, vague word-of-mouth stories, and no one had dared to confirm them publicly. The reason was clear: fear. Fear of losing jobs, fear of being sidelined, fear of offending influential figures, fear of career consequences. Then the wife asked a question that resonated widely: what if the person being treated like this was your father, your brother, or your sister? Suddenly, former TPUSA staff began to speak out anonymously, almost simultaneously, not through the press, but through online channels. Several said they had witnessed similar patterns of behavior and seen incidents ignored or covered up. According to their accounts, connections often mattered more than rules, and people were protected not because they were right, but because they belonged to the right group. Tensions had been simmering for months over how sensitive situations were handled internally, but no one dared to question it. Everyone stayed quiet, unwilling to risk their relationships with those in power, and once these accounts started coming to light, more people began to pay attention. Some began to piece together the broader pattern, and suddenly, what had seemed like isolated incidents became part of a much larger story. Observers began pointing out that the Chief of Staff reportedly had a history of making controversial decisions, especially when it came to personnel matters. Some online voices suggested this wasn't the first time the Chief of Staff had been accused of protecting someone who arguably shouldn't have been shielded. That raises the question, is this simply defending a colleague, or is it part of a recurring pattern? The story becomes even more complex. Some online users have speculated that Erika may have financial or business ties to certain TPUSA projects. If true, protecting her wouldn't just be personal, it could influence larger organizational goals, affect public perception, and impact key initiatives. That could explain why many might feel incentivized to keep her content quiet and prevent any public fallout. At this point, it's no longer just about private messages or boundary-crossing incidents. According to the online community, there appear to be deeper connections at play, networks and opportunities, including speaking engagements or project involvement, that could have significant consequences if exposed. The implications go far beyond personal disputes, potentially touching on broader organizational interests and influence. These connections reportedly include internal projects, media and political relationships, and even long-term work arrangements that have been planned. If the story grows any bigger, all of those opportunities could be disrupted, which may explain why some individuals allegedly have a strong incentive to keep things quiet. So, what happens next? We're still in the middle of the storm, and the story continues to evolve by the hour. As of now, Erika Kirk has remained completely silent in response to the growing attention and allegations. No posts, no statements, no clarifications, nothing. That silence has sparked questions online. If someone is wrongly accused, they usually respond immediately, so why the quiet this time? And that silence, according to observers, is only amplifying the scrutiny. TPUSA, too, has stayed silent. The organization has not issued an official statement regarding the Chief of Staff's alleged involvement in covering up the behavior. No denials, no promises to investigate, not even a note acknowledging the situation. All eyes are now on them, waiting to see whether they will finally speak up or attempt to let the controversy fade quietly.